Your daughter is alive." Henry Lockhart, the billionaire at the center of the mourners, looked up from the casket that was about to be lowered. His eyes, still raw from grief, locked onto the girl's. "What did you just say?" His voice cracked, almost unwilling to repeat the question. The girl stepped forward, guards hesitating in the tension. "She's not in that coffin. That's not your daughter." The priest stumbled a step back. The crowd began to murmur, confusion rippling like wind through leaves. "You're mistaken," Henry said stiffly. "My daughter died in that fire. We found the body ourselves. Get this child out of here." But the girl didn't flinch. "I was there," she said. "The night the fire happened, I saw someone take her." A big man, limped like one of his legs was hurt bad. He dragged her out the back before the flames reached the second floor. Henry's face turned ashen. "You're lying," he snapped. "Don't make this worse." "I'm not," she said firmly. "I followed them for 2 blocks until they got into a black SUV. There was another person with him, a woman. I thought she was trying to help, but she wasn't. She was laughing. They looked close." Henry's mouth twitched. "What woman?" The girl met his eyes. "The one standing right there. Your fiancée." The entire crowd went still. Beside Henry, Veronica, the poised, elegant woman who had been holding his arm, stiffened. "This is outrageous," she barked. "Get this filthy brat out of here." Henry's world tilted. The image of his little girl lying cold and still in a morgue drawer was still fresh. That pain was barely scabbed over, and now this. "You don't know what you're saying," he muttered, shaking his head. But the girl Maya, as she would soon be known, stepped closer and said softly, "Check the dashcam on her car. It was parked across the street that night. Your daughter was in the back seat before they drove off. She left something behind, something with her name. If this story moved you, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love hearing from our community. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with us for more powerful stories that matter. Your support means the world." Henry blinked, breath catching in his throat. That car had been towed and returned. He hadn't thought to look at it. Who would? He'd buried his daughter, not questioned her death. "Enough," Veronica snapped, lunging toward Maya. "Get away from us, you little liar." The security guards rushed in, but not before Maya recoiled, one hand over her cheek where Veronica's words had struck deeper than any slap. "Henry," Veronica growled. "She's a parasite. She's trying to twist your grief. You can't let this happen." But Henry wasn't looking at her anymore. He stared at the casket, then back at Maya. Something in her expression reminded him too much of his daughter. That fierce innocence, that fire. The priest hesitantly asked, "Mr. Lockhart, shall we continue with the burial?" Henry didn't answer. His pulse pounded. His hands were cold. That SUV, the limp, the laughter, and now Veronica. He turned to the funeral director. "Stop. Don't lower the casket. Secure it. We're not done here." A gasp erupted from the crowd. Veronica's face twisted. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Henry said slowly, "I need to see that car. Today." And somewhere behind him, Maya exhaled, her small hand clenched around a frayed shoelace bracelet. It was just the beginning. Veronica caught up to Henry the moment they stepped past the wrought iron gate of the cemetery, her heels clicking against the wet pavement like warning shots. The press hadn't caught wind of what just happened yet, but the tension was climbing fast. Henry's car waited nearby, and the rain had picked up again, misting his shoulders as he ignored the tremble in her voice. "Henry, this is madness," she said, forcing a soft laugh as she slipped her hand into his arm. "You're grieving. You can't let some street urchin manipulate you." He shook her off with a force that surprised even him. "You didn't mention you were near the house the night of the fire," he said, eyes never leaving hers. Her face remained still for a heartbeat too long. Then, smoothly, "Because I wasn't. That little girl is lying." Henry tilted his head. "She knew about the limp." Veronica scoffed. "So? People saw it on the news. The fire, the responders, there were plenty of bystanders." Henry narrowed his eyes. No one outside knew about the SUV, or the bracelet. That stopped her cold. He turned to Maya, who stood shivering beside the car, shoes soaked through, arms wrapped around herself. Her face was stone, but her eyes darted from Veronica to Henry, watching, measuring like someone used to being dismissed but always braced for danger. "Show me," Henry said. Maya reached into her oversized hoodie, and pulled out a small, ragged piece of fabric pink, scorched on one edge, wrapped around what looked like a button with tiny cartoon stars on it. She handed it to Henry. "I saw her drop this in the back seat of that car," Maya said. She was crying. Her wrists were tied. Henry took the fabric in his hand and stared. His breath caught. He remembered it instantly. It was the shoelace bracelet he and his daughter had made together during a summer cabin trip. His hands had tied the final knot. She had cried when it slipped off during a hike, and he'd found it later tangled in her backpack. Since then, she'd worn it every day. He turned the button over. Her initials, scribbled in Sharpie. S.L. Samantha Lockhart. "Jesus," he whispered. Veronica lunged forward, snatching at the bracelet. "That's not. She could have stolen that from the house." "Maya's never been to the house," Henry said tightly. Veronica's eyes darted, calculating. Then she turned to Maya, venom in her voice. "You're clever, I'll give you that. Did you dig this out of the trash? Or did someone put you up to this? You think you're going to get a reward?" Maya stared at her with something beyond defiance, something closer to heartbreak. "I didn't do this for money," she said. "I did it because I know what it's like to be forgotten." Henry turned toward his car without another word. "Come with me." Maya hesitated. "To where?" "My garage. I'm pulling the car footage from Veronica's vehicle." Veronica moved to block him. "You don't honestly believe her. Henry, look at me. That girl is a stray, a liar. She's playing on your grief. Don't let her." "I said get in the car," he barked. Silence followed. The driver opened the door. Maya crawled in first, curling into a corner of the back seat. Veronica stood frozen on the pavement, her mouth slightly open, rain beginning to soak her silk blouse. Henry didn't look back. The ride to his estate in Westchester was a long one, stretched by the silence. Henry sat stiffly, hands clenched. Occasionally, he glanced at Maya through the mirror. She never looked up. Once inside the gates, the garage's biometric scanner recognized Henry's palm, and the heavy door lifted slowly, revealing the sleek fleet of cars. At the far end sat the black Mercedes SUV Veronica had driven the night of the fire. "Stay back," Henry told Maya, stepping forward. He opened the passenger door. The car smelled like cedar and perfume. He reached beneath the dashboard, pressed the release switch, and pulled out the dashcam unit. Veronica had claimed to disable it weeks ago due to a malfunction. Henry never questioned it. He regretted that now. Back in the main house, Henry inserted the memory card into his study's monitor. Maya stood by the door, not daring to enter. He beckoned her forward. The footage loaded. The screen flickered, then stabilized. The date and timestamp matched the night of the fire. The first 20 minutes showed nothing but an empty driveway across the street from the burning townhouse. Then motion. A man appeared, tall and broad-shouldered, dragging something or someone through the shadows. He limped. Seconds later, Veronica stepped into the frame, holding the rear car door open. The man shoved the struggling child inside. Veronica smiled. Maya turned away from the screen, hugging herself. Henry sat frozen. Then the footage cut to black. No timestamp, no ending. Veronica had edited the file. Henry leaned back in the chair, his mind blank. He felt cold, betrayed. The grief that had been burying him for weeks suddenly ignited into something else, rage. "I want the original hard drive pulled," he said quietly. "I don't care what it costs." Maya finally looked up. "You believe me now?" Henry turned toward her. "I don't know what I believe," he said hoarsely, "but I know who I don't trust anymore." She nodded, silent. Outside, the rain turned into a steady storm, and somewhere out there, his daughter might still be breathing. The storm pounded against the windows as Henry stood alone in the darkness of his study. Rain coursed down the glass, thunder rumbled across the hills, but inside, it was the silence that screamed. The image of Veronica's face on the footage smiling while a limp-bodied child was shoved into her car looped in his mind like a horror he couldn't shut off. He reached for the old whiskey decanter his mother had gifted him years ago. His hand trembled as he poured a glass, but he didn't drink it. He stared into the amber liquid, trying to gather the courage to admit what had already rooted in his gut. His daughter might be alive. And the woman he was going to marry, she had lied to him. Lied while helping someone take Samantha. Behind him, Maya stood in the hallway, still damp from the rain. She clutched her arms. unwilling to step further into the grand room. It wasn't fear. Maya didn't fear easily, but distance was how she survived. That, and silence. Henry turned to her. "You hungry?" She blinked, surprised by the question. "A little." "Come on," he said, and walked past her toward the kitchen. They ate in silence. He reheated chicken soup. Maya stirred it slowly, her spoon making small circles. Her eyes remained low, but now and then she glanced at him, as if trying to determine whether the warmth in his voice was real or temporary. "Where are your parents?" he asked softly. She didn't look up. "Dead. Foster system kicked me out when I turned 9, said they had no space. I've been on my own since February." Henry stared at her. "You've been on the streets for 7 months?" She nodded. "I've got places. A library that doesn't lock one of the windows. The boiler room behind St. Luke's. Sometimes I sleep on hospital benches. They leave the heat on." Something broke inside him. His daughter had never known a cold night. She had a memory foam mattress, a canopy bed, and a nightlight that played lullabies. "What made you follow that car?" he asked. Maya's voice was barely above a whisper. It didn't feel right. "I saw her face. She looked like me. Same scared eyes. I knew no one would believe a kid like me, so I just followed until I couldn't." She looked up. She never screamed. She just looked at me, like she wanted me to remember. Henry's breath caught. A long silence passed. "I'm going to find her," he said, more to himself than to her. "I swear it." She nodded. "I know." Later that night, Henry called a private tech specialist he'd used once before in a corporate espionage case. A man named Elijah Barron, quiet, discreet, and allergic to bureaucracy. "I need the full recovery from a dashcam hard drive," Henry said over speakerphone. "And I want the vehicle analyzed for DNA traces. You'll have to come to my estate." Elijah agreed. He would arrive by morning. Henry hung up and turned to Maya, who stood near the French doors watching the storm. "There's a guest room upstairs. You can shower and sleep there." Maya hesitated. "Do you have pajamas or something?" Henry smiled faintly. "I'll have someone find something in Samantha's closet." Her eyes flickered. "Will that be okay?" Henry nodded. "She'd want you to be warm." That night, Henry couldn't sleep. He wandered into the garage alone, flashlight in hand. The SUV sat quietly, indifferent to the role it had played. He opened the back door, removed the floor mat, and swept the cracks between the seats. His heart jumped when the beam of light caught something. A bead, purple, plastic. He picked it up. The kind used for kids' hair braids. Samantha had dozens. He kept stepping on them until Veronica told her to stop wearing them, but she never listened. He pocketed the bead and climbed into the back seat, trying to picture how it had all gone down. Samantha being pulled in, tied, maybe, forced quiet. Veronica watching. Why? He saw the bracelet again in his mind, the frayed ends. She must have fought. She always fought. The door creaked. He turned fast. Maya stood at the entrance, now clean, her hair damp and combed, wearing one of Samantha's old sweaters that hung almost to her knees. "You okay?" she asked. He hesitated. "I should be asking you that." She walked slowly toward the car. "You think she's alive?" Henry nodded. "I do now." They sat together in silence for a moment, the garage humming faintly with the sound of the rain outside. Maya glanced at the SUV's dashboard. If she left one bead, maybe there's more. Henry turned sharply. "You're right." Together, they scoured the back seat. Another 20 minutes passed before Maya spotted something wedged between the seat and the door panel. A crayon. Yellow. She lifted it like a treasure. "She dropped these too?" "She used to color everything," Henry said. "Even the car windows." Maya smiled. "She wanted you to find her." Henry stared at the crayon and nodded slowly. "She still does." By morning, Elijah arrived in a silver hatchback packed with gear. Within an hour, he had the dashcam hard drive hooked up to his laptop, running recovery software. "It'll take a few hours," he muttered. "But if there's deleted footage, I'll get it." Henry offered no small talk. He hovered, tense. Maya sat on the armrest nearby, legs tucked underneath, watching. Finally, Elijah frowned. "There's more," he said. Files were deleted, but not overwritten. He opened the restored footage. A new clip played. Timestamp: 20 minutes after the car had driven away. Veronica sat in the driver's seat. The man with the limp was beside her. They were talking, quietly. Then something unmistakable happened. Samantha's muffled cry came from the back. Veronica turned and snapped, "Keep her quiet." The screen froze on her face, cold, sharp, unrecognizable. Henry stared at it in silence. Then he stood up. "Call the police?" Elijah asked. Henry shook his head. "Not yet." Maya stood beside him, heart pounding. "Why not?" "Because whoever's helping her, whoever's behind this, it's not just them," he said. "This goes deeper. And if we don't move carefully," he looked at the screen again, "we might lose her forever." By noon, Henry's estate had shifted from mourning to mission. The footage from the dashcam confirmed everything Maya had said and more. Veronica's involvement was undeniable. Samantha's cry, though brief and muffled, had pierced Henry's soul deeper than any grave could. His little girl hadn't died in a fire. She had been taken. He stood in the sunlit conservatory, staring out over the trimmed hedges and marble paths that once brought him peace. Maya sat cross-legged on the floor near the window, sorting through the collection of hair beads and crayon bits they'd retrieved from the car. She was organizing them like evidence, her small hands methodical and careful. She didn't speak much, but Henry had begun to understand her silence. It wasn't emptiness, it was observation. The girl missed nothing. Elijah entered the room with a laptop tucked under one arm and a printed photo in the other. "I enhanced the image of the man from the video," he said. "Did some facial recognition scraping. Got a partial hit." Henry turned. Elijah handed him the photo. "Name's Carter Briggs, former private contractor. Worked in South America for a few years. Rumors of black market involvement. Disappeared from official records 3 years ago. The limp? Shrapnel injury, reportedly." Henry studied the man's face. Thick neck, sharp brow, eyes like old concrete. It was him. The man who took Samantha. Elijah continued. "He's been seen in northern Maryland. Outskirts, remote farm property. No official listing. But I traced fuel deliveries. Place is paid for under an offshore trust." "Owned by Veronica?" Henry asked. "Hard to say," Elijah said. "Shell companies, but she's on the board of the holding firm." Henry's jaw clenched. "We need to go there." "I figured you'd say that," Elijah replied. "But you can't show up alone. We don't know what's waiting." Henry turned to Maya. She was watching, listening without a word. He knelt beside her. "You've done more than anyone already. I want you to stay here, where it's safe." She frowned. "I'm not afraid." "I know," he said softly, "but I am. If something happens to you." Maya looked away. "I've been alone most of my life. This is the first time I feel like someone actually sees me. I don't want to go back to being invisible." Henry felt a sting behind his eyes. He put a hand on her shoulder. "You're not invisible anymore, Maya. You saved my daughter's life. That matters." She nodded, biting her lip to keep it steady. Then, unexpectedly, she pulled something from her pocket and handed it to him. It was a folded scrap of lined paper. "What's this?" "A drawing," she said. "I made it the night I saw her get taken. I didn't want to forget." He unfolded it. Crayon lines crooked but vivid showed a girl in a red dress being pulled into a dark car by a man with a heavy leg. A second figure, a woman, stood beside him. The details were chillingly accurate. Samantha's dress, the shadowed alley, even the shape of the SUV. Henry folded it carefully. "Thank you." 2 hours later, he and Elijah were driving north along Route 1, the landscape growing more rural with every passing mile. Henry's mind raced. The question wasn't just where Samantha was, it was why. What did Veronica gain from this? Money? Power? Revenge? They reached the property at dusk. The sky burned gold and purple behind a line of skeletal trees. The house itself was old brick and stone with black shutters and a sloped roof. It looked abandoned, but Henry had seen enough corporate cover-ups to recognize a false front. They parked in a tree-lined dip just off the gravel driveway. Elijah set up a drone, sent it aloft. 3 heat signatures, he reported. 1 near the kitchen, 1 in what looks like a basement, 1 by the barn. Henry's heart pounded. The basement. That's where she'd be. "We go in quiet," Elijah said. "No phones, no signals. We don't call for backup unless we have to. They moved like shadows. Henry's body buzzed with adrenaline, but his hands were steady. He was no soldier, but he was a father, and that gave him a kind of courage no training could match. Inside, the house was eerily silent. The floorboards creaked. Faint music played somewhere, an old jazz tune warbling on vinyl. Elijah led the way, sweeping each corner. They found the door to the basement near the pantry. It was locked. Elijah picked it in seconds. The air changed the moment they stepped inside. Cold, musty, and then faintly a sob. Henry froze. Another sob. He didn't wait. He ran down the steps, nearly slipping. At the bottom, he found a narrow hallway and a steel door bolted from the outside. His hands shook as he fumbled with the latch. It opened with a groan. The room was small. A mattress on the floor, a bucket, a flickering bulb, and in the corner, curled up with her arms around her knees, was Samantha. Her hair was tangled, her face pale, but her eyes opened as soon as the light hit. Henry dropped to his knees. "Samantha?" She blinked. "Daddy?" The word broke him. He pulled her into his arms, wrapping her so tightly she squeaked. "I'm here," he whispered over and over. "I'm here. I found you. I'm here." She sobbed into his coat. Elijah stood watch at the door, eyes sharp. They didn't stay long. As they left the house, Samantha clinging to her father's chest, Elijah's voice was tight. "The man's gone, but I found some files. And letters. We'll dig deeper." Henry nodded. "We bring it all down, everyone involved." Samantha stirred. "I tried to leave a clue," she mumbled. "You did," Henry said, kissing her forehead. "And someone found it. A brave girl named Maya." In the distance, thunder rolled again. But this time, Henry felt no fear. He had her back. And now justice would follow. The morning after the rescue, the Lockhart estate was no longer silent. Sirens wailed as unmarked police vehicles arrived in waves. News helicopters circled above, despite Henry's team's best efforts to keep the press away. For the first time in weeks, the mansion's long driveway was bustling not with grief-stricken mourners, but with agents, forensic teams, and investigators moving quickly between interviews and evidence. Henry stood in the marble foyer, holding Samantha close to his chest. Her small arms clung to him like vines. She hadn't spoken much since they returned. Just soft whimpers in her sleep, and occasionally a gasp when a shadow passed too quickly. But she didn't let go, not even once. Across the room, Maya sat stiffly on a couch too big for her frame. Her hair was brushed now, her new hoodie dry and clean, but she still clutched the crayon drawing in one hand like a shield. Detective Olivia Reyes, head of the Missing Persons Task Force, approached Henry. Her face was stern, her tone measured. She looked to be in her early 50s, sharp jawline, short gray curls, eyes that missed nothing. "I've just reviewed the footage and Elijah's notes," she said. "The girl's testimony matches perfectly. And the property you found her in technically owned by a holding company linked to Veronica Hart." Henry nodded. "Then arrest her." "We will," Reyes said, "but carefully. A woman like that, with money and influence, she won't go down quietly. She'll lawyer up, claim extortion, maybe even try to flip this on you." "She helped kidnap my daughter," Henry said through gritted teeth. "What part of that is unclear?" Reyes softened slightly. "I believe you. But this isn't just about your daughter anymore. There's a network here, possibly trafficking. Briggs, he's not some lone creep. We think he's been involved in 3 other cases, but until we get our hands on him, we need to be surgical." Henry exhaled slowly. "What do you need from me?" "Your full cooperation. Access to every document Veronica may have touched. Any emails, phone logs, meeting records. Everything." He nodded. "Done." Reyes turned to Maya. "And her? She stays," Henry said firmly. "She's not just a witness. She saved my daughter." Reyes gave a short nod of respect. "Then we'll protect her too." As Reyes walked away, Henry approached Maya and crouched in front of her. "You did something extraordinary," he said. Maya didn't look up. "You gave my daughter a chance to come home." Finally, her voice came out, quiet but certain. "She looked like someone I lost, a sister, from foster care. We got separated years ago. I couldn't help her, but I could help Samantha. Henry's throat tightened. You're not alone anymore. Maya blinked, her eyes shimmering. What happens to her now? To your daughter? She heals, he said, slowly, with time and love. And Veronica? Henry's jaw clenched. She answers for what she did. By the afternoon, Reyes and her team had tracked Veronica to a luxury spa resort 2 hours outside the city. She was arrested in the penthouse suite, wearing silk robes, sipping imported wine, and pretending nothing had happened. Her reaction when she saw the warrant was dramatic, screaming, accusations. This is absurd, she shrieked. I'm being framed. But the hard drives, surveillance footage, and witness testimony were airtight. Veronica was booked on charges of conspiracy to kidnap, endangering the welfare of a child, obstruction of justice, and suspected involvement in organized child trafficking. Her lawyers moved fast, but Reyes moved faster. Back at the estate, Samantha finally slept in her old bed, curled beneath her favorite quilt with the glow of her nightlight painting soft stars across the ceiling. Henry sat beside her, brushing her hair gently. He didn't know how to talk about what had happened. He only knew she was breathing, and that was enough. Maya stood in the doorway, watching. You can come in, Henry said. She stepped in slowly. I didn't mean to stare. I've never seen a room like this. It's yours now, Henry said without turning. What? I mean, if you want. You saved her. You saved me. You deserve a place that sees you, that protects you. She frowned. You're not just saying that because you feel sorry for me? He looked at her then, really looked. I don't pity you, Maya. I admire you. You were braver than any adult I know. Her lip trembled, but she nodded. Later that night, while the house was quiet, Henry stood on the back patio, looking up at the stars. Elijah joined him, holding a file. What is it? Henry asked. The man Briggs. He's not just a contractor. He was dishonorably discharged 10 years ago, worked in special ops, then went underground. We think he's part of a larger ring. Children, mostly, sold or exploited. Henry felt bile rise in his throat. Elijah continued. Veronica wasn't just helping him. She was managing assets, running transfers. You stumbled onto something massive. Henry closed his eyes. You still want to go public? Elijah asked. I want justice, Henry replied. Not just for Samantha, for every child they hurt. He looked out over the darkness. I want them to burn. The next morning, Reyes issued a federal warrant for Carter Briggs. The manhunt had begun, and for the first time in a long while, Henry Lockhart felt something bloom in his chest that wasn't pain. It was purpose. The hunt for Carter Briggs didn't unfold like a movie. There were no high-speed chases through rain-slicked streets or dramatic standoffs at warehouse doors. Instead, it moved slowly, methodically like a surgeon's scalpel carving through years of rot. For Henry Lockhart, that made the wait even worse. It was day 3 since Samantha's rescue. The estate had turned into a kind of war room. Agents came and went. Analysts hunched over computers. Maps and timelines covered the once pristine walls of Henry's private study. The house that once echoed with soft piano music now pulsed with tension. Maya, never far from the action, stood with Olivia Reyes at a corkboard littered with photos and strings. She traced a finger along a red line from Veronica's spa arrest to an offshore account in Belize. Why would she need so many accounts? Maya asked. To hide where the money goes, Reyes said. When you want to disappear money or people, you create confusion, misdirection. Veronica's smart, but even she left traces, and Carter's name keeps popping up near everyone. Henry entered the room holding 2 coffees. One he handed to Reyes. The other he placed beside Maya, who accepted it with a small nod. Any word yet? He asked. Reyes gestured to the board. Interpol flagged a private jet that landed in West Virginia 2 nights ago. No passenger manifest, but the plane was chartered by a shell company we now know was managed by Veronica. Carter? Henry's voice tightened. We think so. We're narrowing the radius. He may be hiding in the Appalachians, dense forest, old mining towns, places where people mind their own business. Henry's jaw worked. Then let's not wait for him to move. That afternoon, a federal task force deployed to a cluster of abandoned cabins near the Blue Ridge border. Helicopters buzzed low. Drones scanned tree lines. Officers moved with silent precision. But Carter wasn't there. They found evidence: a half-burned journal, empty medication vials, protein bar wrappers. Someone had stayed there, recently, and left in a hurry. Henry watched the drone feed live from the estate, a familiar ache building in his gut. The man who stole his daughter was still out there, free, breathing. He couldn't tolerate that. Later that night, he found Maya in the garden, sitting on a stone bench beneath a weeping willow. "You should be asleep," he said. "So should you." He chuckled softly. "Touché." They sat together in silence. Crickets chirped. The air smelled of damp earth and honeysuckle. "I still see her sometimes," Maya said. "Samantha, in that room, in the car, in my dreams." Henry nodded. "Me too. Even before I knew the truth." "Do you think they'll catch him?" Henry hesitated. "I don't believe in maybe anymore. Only action." Maya looked up. "Can I help?" "You already have." "I want to help more." He turned to her. "You've been through enough." "So has she," Maya said. "And she didn't ask for any of it." Henry looked away, emotion rising. "No, she didn't." They sat for a while longer. Then Henry stood and placed a hand on Maya's shoulder. "Come inside. It's getting cold." The next morning brought a break. One of the drones caught a flash of metal near a quarry 10 miles north of the last known location. A campsite, partially hidden beneath a rock outcrop. A motorcycle with mismatched plates. And a plastic tarp covering what looked like supply crates. Reyes coordinated with the tactical team. "We move in at dawn. No lights. No noise. He's armed, possibly wired. We take him alive, but only if we can do it clean." Henry was at the briefing, standing beside Reyes, as she pointed to topographical maps. "Let me come," he said. Reyes paused. "That's not protocol." "He took my daughter," Henry said. "I won't get in the way, but I need to see this through." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Stay behind the second line. No heroics." At first light, Henry stood in full tactical gear loaned to him reluctantly by Reyes's team at the edge of the drop zone. They approached on foot, boots silent over wet leaves and moss-covered stone. The quarry was a jagged wound in the forest floor. The team split and surrounded the site. Then, a rustle. A shadow moved. "Contact," a voice crackled over the radio. Henry crouched behind a tree, heart pounding. Carter Briggs emerged from the rocks like a ghost. Dirty, bearded, limping, he carried a long duffel. His eyes scanned the tree line. "Briggs," an agent called. "Drop the bag, hands up." Briggs bolted. Shots rang out, not at him, but into the air to corral his path. The man ducked, twisted, ran like a wild thing despite the limp. Henry didn't think. He moved, broke cover, gave chase. "Lockhart, no," Reyes shouted. But Henry was faster than he expected, adrenaline burning away fear. He caught up just as Briggs stumbled on a root and crashed to the ground. Henry leapt, pinned him. "You took my daughter," he roared. Briggs thrashed. "You don't know what she's worth." Henry's fist connected once, then he stopped himself, panting, blood roaring in his ears. Reyes and the team arrived seconds later, weapons drawn. "Step back," she barked. Henry rolled off as they cuffed Briggs. The man sneered through bloody teeth. "You think this ends with me?" Reyes glared at him. "Number, but it starts with you." Back at the estate, as the news broke, Maya sat with Samantha on the couch. The younger girl held a stuffed rabbit, eyes wide as she watched the screen. "That's him?" she asked. Maya nodded. Samantha leaned closer. "You saw him take me." "Yes," Maya whispered. "Why did you help me?" Maya blinked. "Because I knew someone had to." Samantha reached out and took Maya's hand. Neither said anything more, but Henry, standing in the doorway, saw it clearly. The beginning of healing, and the spark of a new kind of family. 3 weeks later, the courtroom was a theater of tension. Henry Lockhart sat at the plaintiff's table in a navy suit, his eyes fixed forward, but his mind swirling with every lie, every betrayal, every tear Samantha had shed. Maya sat beside him, wearing a simple dress and her trademark resolve. Her presence had become something of a symbol, a quiet force in the storm of media chaos swirling outside. On the opposite side of the aisle, Veronica Hart looked like a woman determined to rewrite reality. Her lawyer, slick, practiced, unfazed, leaned in and whispered something that made her smirk. She was dressed in muted colors, pearls around her neck, her posture impeccable. To the outside world, she was still the socialite philanthropist, tragically entangled in unfortunate circumstances. But inside these walls, that mask was crumbling. Judge Dana Holloway, a woman with decades on the bench and a reputation for being fiercely unswayed by power, entered the courtroom with a slow, deliberate pace. "Court is now in session," the bailiff announced. Henry didn't blink. He had prepared for this moment, not just with his legal team, but in long, silent hours staring at Samantha while she slept, remembering the promises he'd made to her since the day she was born. The first witness called was Detective Reyes. Her testimony was surgical, calm, detailed, and devastating. "Yes, we recovered video footage showing Miss Hart in the company of the primary suspect, Carter Briggs, both before and after the abduction," Reyes stated. "And yes, forensic evidence linked Samantha Lockhart to the back seat of Miss Hart's vehicle. Hair strands, fingerprints, and a child's bracelet with the name Samantha spelled in beads." The defense tried to interject. "Objection. Circumstantial. Sustained," the judge said, but the damage was done. Next, Elijah Barron was called to the stand. He explained the digital trail that connected Veronica to offshore accounts and multiple international transactions flagged for investigation. Every number he shared was like another nail in the coffin of her defense. But the moment that turned the entire courtroom breathless came when Maya was called to testify. She walked to the stand with her head high, eyes steady. Henry's chest tightened. This girl had faced monsters, and now she was facing their enabler under oath. "State your name for the court." "Maya Evans. Do you know the defendant?" "Yes. Where did you first see her?" Maya recounted the night of the fire. Her voice didn't shake. She described the limp of the man, the way the woman laughed as Samantha was shoved into the SUV, and the helplessness she'd felt as the car disappeared. "Did the woman appear to be helping the child in distress?" "Number. She didn't look worried. She looked like she'd done it before." Veronica's lawyer objected again, claiming bias. The judge overruled. Then came the question that drew the room tighter. "Why did you follow the car, Maya?" "A pause. I'd seen too many people vanish," Maya said quietly. "No one listens to girls like me, so I knew I had to remember everything. For her, There was a hush so deep it felt like the courtroom had stopped breathing. Henry wiped at his eye. Even the judge's expression softened. After court adjourned for the day, Veronica's legal team huddled in corners, voices sharp, anxious. Public opinion had already begun to turn. News outlets were camped on the courthouse steps. The world was watching. Outside, Samantha waited with her therapist and a security detail. When Henry walked out with Maya, she ran into his arms. "Did you win?" she asked. "Not yet," Henry said, "but we're getting closer." Samantha looked at Maya. "You were really brave." Maya shrugged, but her cheeks flushed. "So were you." That evening, back at the estate, the three of them sat in the living room. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting warm light on the walls. Maya helped Samantha build a puzzle while Henry spoke with Reyes on speakerphone. "The DA wants to offer Briggs a deal," Reyes said. "He gives up the rest of the network. We give him life without parole instead of the death penalty." "Will he take it?" Henry asked. "He's already talking. We've identified 2 more safe houses. This goes deeper than any of us thought." Henry leaned back in his chair. "Then keep going. Don't stop until they're all exposed." Later that night, Henry found Maya standing outside, looking up at the stars. "Cold out here," he said, offering her a blanket. She took it but didn't speak for a moment. Then, "What happens when it's over? When the trial ends? When the reporters go away?" Henry nodded slowly. "We heal. And me? You have a home here, Maya, for as long as you want it." She looked up at him, eyes searching. "Not because I helped?" "No," he said. "Because you're family." She blinked back tears. "That's the first time anyone's ever said that to me." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then I hope it won't be the last." In the distance, thunder rolled again, but this time, it didn't bring fear. It brought the promise of justice. Maya stood at the edge of the garden fountain under a sky bruised red by autumn's last light. The night air carried the smell of wood, smoke, and damp leaves. She pressed Samantha's hand in her own. Across the stone tiles, Henry approached, fresh from the courtroom. The verdict was in, guilty. The room had thundered like a storm as the jury handed down life without parole for Veronica Hart. But outside in the hush beneath the trees, it felt as if nothing had truly changed, yet everything had. He knelt before the girls, voice low and worn. "It's over." Samantha looked up at him, eyes wide. Maya watched, jaw tight, not sure how to feel. The relief and the pain seemed to tangle together in cold knots. A distant owl called. Then another. Henry swallowed and reached for Samantha's scarf, the one she'd worn the night before disappearance. He smoothed it gently between his fingers as if it were still warm against her neck. Samantha leaned into him. "Daddy?" "Shh." He drew in a shaky breath. "It's okay. It's done." Maya swallowed. She had expected a celebration, cries of joy, but instead this somber quiet. The finality felt too heavy. She opened her mouth, then closed it. She began. Henry lifted his gaze, meeting her eyes. "Yes?" She looked around the garden, the statues, the path that had once felt like another world. Now what? He thought about it. Thought about lawyers, news vans, phone calls, but also about pancakes, bedtime stories, and what it meant to rebuild a life that had seemed forever broken. He put down the scarf. Now, life. Days later, Samantha and Maya walked through the estate's orchard. Crisp apples dangled, heavy with ripeness. Maya reached for one and held it out to Samantha. The younger girl sniffed at the tang of sweetness and then took a cautious bite. Her eyes brightened. They found Henry seated under a gnarled tree, paper in hand. He looked up, his face ghost peaceful. He showed them the legal documents. Veronica's remaining assets had been frozen, funds redirected to a trust for victims of human trafficking, in Samantha's name. He folded the paperwork gently. "I want this to matter." His gaze rested on Maya. "I need you both with me." Maya's thoughts drifted. The long nights, the bus rides, the alley corners where she'd waited. She'd thought there was nothing beyond them. Now here she was holding her breath, staring at the man who had helped her save a life. "Can I go to school?" Samantha asked. "Tomorrow," Henry said. "Whatever you want." He turned to Maya. "And you, what do you want?" She hesitated, then whispered, "A chance." He nodded. "Then that's what I'll give you." That evening, the house felt lighter. In the kitchen, Maya helped Samantha mix cookie dough, flour dusting their wrists like snow. The two girls giggled when the mixture stuck to their noses. Henry watched from the doorway, heart loose for the first time in months. When Mary, the housekeeper, passed by, she paused at the doorway. Her eyes met his soft, understanding. She placed a warm tray of chai on the counter. "Would you like some?" she offered gently. He nodded. "Thank you." Mary poured 2 cups. She handed one to Henry, and then paused at Maya's elbow. To Maya, Mary said softly, "You've brought back a little light to this house." Maya swallowed tears. "Thank you," she said, voice thick. Later, Samantha lay asleep in her bed. The soft glow of her nightlight painted gentle shapes on the ceiling. Maya sat on the window seat, staring at the stars. Henry came in, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, sat beside her. They watched the sky. "You know," Henry said, "I learned something from her." Maya turned to him. "Who?" "Your bravery," he answered. "It lit the path." Maya nodded, and after a moment whispered, "I wish I knew my parents." Henry hesitated. "I want to help you find them when the time comes, but for now, you belong here." She leaned her head against his shoulder. The next morning, Detective Reyes visited. She brought news. Carter Briggs had named other accomplices. Veronica's network was unraveling. Charges would soon reach farther than anyone had hoped. Henry's heartbeat steadied at that. Justice was no longer a distant promise, it was unfolding. At the door, Reyes turned to Henry. "Your daughter and Maya, both extraordinary, both survivors." He nodded. "So are they new American hopes." That evening, the 3 of them, Henry, Samantha, and Maya, stood at the edge of the old garden pond. Candles floated on the water. Samantha reached out, touching the flame of hope in the wax cup. Maya's hand met hers. Henry knelt behind them, placing his hands gently on their shoulders. The candles drifted. Light moved on water. Shadows receded. In that quiet glow, family was born. And those shadows, the darkness that had swallowed hope, grew softer with every breath. It was still a long road ahead, but they were walking it together. Maya stood in the hallway of Northridge Middle School, the morning sunlight slanting through tall windows and glinting off polished lockers. Her backpack felt awkward on her shoulder, too new, too full of notebooks with crisp, unused pages. She adjusted it, her fingers twitching with uncertainty. Around her, students hurried to class, their laughter echoing like a foreign language she hadn't learned yet. This was her first day as a student, a real student, with a schedule, a locker, and teachers who knew her name. It was more terrifying than any alley she'd ever slept in. She was about to turn around, just go home, pretend she'd gotten sick, when a small voice behind her said, "You forgot your pencil." Maya turned. Samantha stood there in her uniform skirt, holding out a bright yellow pencil with a little pink eraser that smiled at the top. She gave Maya a tiny grin. "You dropped it outside," she added. Maya took the pencil and nodded. "Thanks." Samantha tilted her head. "You nervous?" Maya hesitated. "A little." Samantha leaned in like it was a secret. "Me too." The tension in Maya's chest loosened. That afternoon, Henry stood outside the school gates in his charcoal coat, watching as the students poured out. He scanned the crowd for Maya and Samantha. The sight of them walking together, laughing, brought a breath to his chest he didn't know he'd been holding. Back at the estate, dinner was already being prepared. Mary moved about the kitchen, humming softly, the scent of rosemary chicken drifting through the halls. Maya helped set the table while Samantha arranged flowers she'd picked from the garden. During dinner, Samantha chatted about her classes, the books she'd borrowed from the library. Maya, quieter, listened until Henry asked, "How was your history class?" Maya looked up. They were talking about people who fought for justice, like Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks. Henry nodded. "Important names." "She reminded me of someone," Maya said, eyes flicking to Samantha. The little girl smiled wide. Henry smiled too, but his gaze wandered, because justice didn't always come with closure. Later that night, he went into his study and opened a sealed folder Reyes had sent that morning. Inside were files, dozens of names, children, some found, some still missing, all linked in some way to Veronica's trafficking ring. It was bigger than he had ever imagined, and one name buried near the bottom jumped out. Jasmine Evans, age 7, disappeared from foster care in Ohio 6 years ago. His eyes widened. Evans. He picked up his phone. The next day, Henry sat with Reyes in a federal office downtown. A large monitor displayed Maya's old foster records, the few that could be salvaged. There were gaps, broken placements, no adoption files. "She was lost in the system," Reyes said. "But Jasmine Evans, we believe she's Maya's sister." Henry leaned forward. "Where is she?" "We're still searching, but if we can confirm the DNA match, we'll open a sibling reunification case." Henry tapped his fingers. "She needs to know." Reyes agreed. "But carefully. We don't want to raise her hopes until we're sure." He left the office in a daze, the weight of the truth sitting heavy in his chest. How many children had been forgotten, dismissed, filed away like broken furniture? When he arrived home, he found Maya on the back steps, sketching in a notebook. Samantha was feeding the koi fish by the pond. He sat beside Maya. "You draw?" She closed the notebook slightly. "Sometimes. Helps me think." He paused, then said, "Did you ever have a sister?" Maya froze. "I think maybe I did," she whispered. "A little one, Jasmine. She liked pink cereal, always lost her socks. But I could be wrong. They told me I imagined it." Henry's voice was gentle. "You didn't. We think she's real. And we're trying to find her." Maya stared at him, the sketchpad falling from her lap. "You're not just saying that?" "Number." Her eyes filled. She turned away, hiding her face. Henry didn't press. A moment later, she whispered, "I kept a picture. The corners burned, but her face was still there." She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded photo, faded, creased, edges singed. A girl with braids smiled from behind a popsicle. Henry took it like a sacred thing. "We'll find her," he said. That night, Samantha crept into Maya's room. She climbed onto the bed and curled beside her. "You okay?" she whispered. Maya nodded slowly. "Do you think your sister remembers you?" "I don't know. Maya said. I hope so. Samantha reached out and held her hand. Even if she forgot, you remembered. That counts. Maya turned toward her, blinking back tears. You're really smart, she said softly. I watch a lot of movies. They both giggled. Henry stood at the doorway, watching, his heart full in a way money could never buy. Later, in the quiet of his study, he wrote in his journal something he hadn't done since the fire. Family is not just who you're born with. It's who you bleed for, who you hold on to when the world lets go. And he made a silent vow. He would find Jasmine. He would bring her home. Because justice wasn't finished. And hope still had names left to call. The days blurred into each other as autumn deepened its grip on the city. Maple leaves flared in bright reds and golds before tumbling to the ground, swirling past Henry Lockhart's feet as he walked the perimeter of the estate. His mind wasn't on the season, but on the thin trail that might lead to Jasmine Evans, Maya's sister, lost somewhere in the cracks of a system that had failed them both. Inside, Maya sat in the study, staring at a digital map displayed across the wide monitor. Red pins dotted several foster homes across Ohio, stretching across counties like scars. Next to her, Agent Olivia Reyes was speaking on the phone in clipped tones, scribbling notes across a legal pad. She was in a temporary group home just outside of Columbus 6 years ago, Reyes said, muting the call for a moment. But then she vanished. The home shut down. No forwarding records. Maya's voice was a whisper. She would have been 7. That's when I stopped remembering her. Reyes gave her a glance. Trauma does that. Outside, Henry re-entered the room, his face pale but focused. He had just come from a meeting with a private investigator. He'd hired someone who specialized in cold child welfare cases. They'd found a potential lead, a girl named Jazz, listed at a small independent shelter in Pittsburgh 2 years ago. No birth certificate, no social security, just a name and a sketch of a butterfly tattoo drawn on her wrist in pen. She drew butterflies, Maya said when she saw the sketch. Always. Said they were magic. Henry nodded. Then it's her. They planned a trip for the following morning. A team from the agency would accompany them. The shelter had since closed, but the staff had been partially tracked down. One former caretaker now worked at a community center in the city. The next morning was fog-thick and quiet. Maya rode beside Henry in the back of a black SUV, her legs bouncing restlessly. She gripped the photo of Jasmine in her hand, rubbing the edges like a lucky charm. Samantha had stayed behind with Mary, waving bravely from the porch. Bring her back, she'd whispered into Maya's ear. I'll try, Maya had promised. The city opened around them in bursts of graffiti and steel. They stopped outside a red-bricked building with flaking paint and hand-painted murals on the walls. Children's voices echoed faintly from within. Reyes met them at the door. This is the place. Ready? Maya nodded. Inside, they were led to a side office. An older woman with graying curls and a sunflower pin on her cardigan looked up from her desk. Her eyes immediately widened when she saw Maya. You, she breathed. You look just like her. Maya's breath hitched. You knew Jasmine? The woman stood slowly. She was here for 6 months. We called her Jazz. She didn't speak much, but she smiled when she drew butterflies, and when she slept, she always clutched a sock monkey like it was life itself. Maya could barely speak. Where is she now? The woman's face fell. She ran away. One night, the alarms didn't catch it. We tried everything. Police wouldn't open a case because she was undocumented in the system. We kept hoping. Henry stepped forward. Can you show us anything she left behind? The woman opened a locked drawer and pulled out a small, worn notebook. She wrote in this. Most pages are scribbles, but the last one. Maya opened the final page. It was a crude map, drawn in red crayon, a bus stop, a building with a blue roof, and a single word scrawled beneath it. Home. Reyes leaned over. That bus line leads to Scranton. There's a shelter near the outskirts that matches that building. Henry was already pulling out his phone. We leave now. The drive was longer this time. Tension pulsed in Maya's chest with each mile. By the time they reached the shelter, night had fallen, and the air was sharp with the promise of frost. They parked in silence. The building was old but well lit, its front steps decorated with paper lanterns. A woman at the front desk greeted them warily, until Reyes flashed her badge and explained the situation. She led them to a small recreation room at the back. Children colored at tables. A young girl played piano in the corner. And near the window, seated alone with headphones in her ears, was a girl with tightly braided hair and a butterfly drawn on her wrist in ink. Maya froze. She walked slowly, the world narrowing to the beat of her own pulse. When she reached the girl, she knelt quietly and said, "Jasmine?" The girl looked up, startled. Her eyes met Maya's. A long pause. Then, "Maya?" Tears welled instantly. They collided in a hug that trembled with years of silence and longing. Jasmine clung to her like a child to a dream, whispering over and over, "You found me. You found me." Henry turned away, blinking hard. Reyes gave him a gentle pat on the arm. This is rare." Later that night, as the SUV drove home through the darkness, Maya held Jasmine's hand tightly in hers. The sisters leaned against each other, the weight of reunion more powerful than any word. Henry glanced back at them through the rearview mirror. In that moment, he saw not two girls rescued from different kinds of hell, but two young warriors, whole again, stronger than the world had ever expected them to be. And for the first time in months, he let himself smile, fully and without restraint. Because tonight, the silence was finally over. The first light of dawn swept across the estate grounds, brushing golden over dewy grass and warming the window panes of the sprawling Lockhart home. Inside, the house hummed with gentle life, the sounds of breakfast being prepared, quiet laughter, and the soft scuffle of feet on hardwood. After their journey and Jasmine's return, something fragile and beautiful had begun to settle into the walls. It was hope. In the kitchen, Mary placed plates of scrambled eggs, toast, and fruit on the table. Samantha and Jasmine sat side by side at the island, their matching cereal bowls brimming, faces lit with giggles as they compared the freckles on each other's noses. Across from them, Maya watched with a tentative smile. Nothing felt awkward anymore, only right. Henry entered quietly, carrying a cup of coffee and looking like a man who'd lived 1,000 lifetimes in tender hours. He cleared his throat softly to announce his presence. The children fell silent. He sat down, offering Maya his cup. She accepted it with a nod. "How do you feel?" he asked gently. Maya traced the rim of the mug. "I feel like I have sisters." Henry's eyes softened. "Then we'll make sure that family means something real." Samantha beamed and reached to link arms with her sisters. Jasmine looked shy but content. Leaning into Maya, as if drawing strength, Mary cleared her throat politely. "Mr. Lockhart, the school is calling. You need to enroll Jasmine formally. She'll need paperwork, records." Henry nodded. "We'll handle it today." Later that morning, the study was alive with activity. Henry reviewed adoption forms and school applications while Reyes tapped away on her laptop, securing legal guardianship rights for Jasmine and ensuring Maya's status was formalized. A quiet peace settled over the room, like sunlight pooling in the corner. Jasmine drifted into the room wearing a new coat and her favorite boots gifts Mary had arranged. Maya stood behind her, straightening the collar. "You look like yourself," Maya said softly. Jasmine tilted her head. "I feel like me." Henry watched them, a fierce protectiveness flickering across his face. He thought of Eleanor, his mother, and the nights he'd spent clutching his grief like armor. He had lost too much, but now, at the edge of all that dark water, he had his breath again. He cleared his throat. "I've arranged for a counselor to come by daily for the first few weeks. For all three of you, if you want." Samantha reached across the table to hold Jasmine's hand. Jasmine nodded, shyly. Maya exhaled. "That would be good." Henry met Maya's gaze. "How about you two?" Maya paused, then nodded. "I'd like that." That afternoon, Henry took Maya on a walk through the estate's orchard. Fruit-laden branches bent overhead, sunlight dappling their path. The girls were inside working on a puzzle with Mary, and for the first time, Henry felt free to speak. "You," he began, then paused. "You've given me back a world I thought lost." Maya glanced at him. "I just did what was right." He shook his head. You did more than right. You did the impossible." Her cheeks warmed. She looked away as a breeze stirred the apples overhead. He handed her a tiny sapling. "This is for you." She turned it in her hands. A young apple tree, roots packed gently in moss. "For me? For your garden, our garden, a land for hope. You and your sisters and Samantha. When it blooms, I want to know we planted it together." Maya's eyes glowed. She gripped the sapling's base, and Henry saw strength in the tilt of her chin. Okay. Days passed with routine warmth. A school bus rumbled into view every morning. Homework was traded in for giggles and bursts of complaint alike. Samantha and Jasmine built sleepovers, complete with whispered stories and shared blankets. Maya found herself reading aloud to Jasmine each night, her voice soft and calm, as if conjuring bravery into the darkness. Then one afternoon, as Henry worked late in the study, Reyes entered. "Henry," she said quietly. He looked up from his notes emails about philanthropic bonds, funding for shelters, expansion plans for the foundation. She offered him a folder. He opened it. Inside were manifests, shipping records, even travelogues data showing Veronica Hart's syndicate had international ties, children moved across borders, laundered through orphanage chains. Each page was a wound opened and a path to justice. Reyes stood back. "FBI is on it. Your story pushed this into federal territory. Without you, nobody would have cared." Henry paused, eyes grave. "Good, we finished this." Reyes inclined her head. "Children all over the world deserve that." That night, dinner smelled of lasagna and garlic bread. Candles flickered at the table. Maya helped Jasmine trace letters for a thank you card to Mary. Samantha told jokes about school lunch, and Mary laughed so hard she nearly spilled her tea. Henry watched them. A father. A defender. And in that moment, a grandfather his mother would have been proud to know. After dinner, he took Maya to the front porch steps. The sapling they'd planted together glowed faintly in the moonlight, leaves trembling in soft wind. "You did this," he said, touching her shoulder gently. "This life." Maya turned, eyes bright. "We did." He looked at her closely. "Promise me something." She tilted her head. "Promise me. Never forget that your voice saved more than one life." Her lips quivered with emotion. "I promise." Behind them, the front door opened. Samantha and Jasmine tumbled onto the porch, giggling about a book they'd finished. Henry smiled wide. "Come on in, you two." Maya watched them slide past, arms linked, laughter trailing behind them. And Henry looked at the sapling again, feeling something tender and fierce bloom in his chest, like the first word of a prayer, or the first sunrise after a storm. Because some truths were eternal. Family chosen, love earned, justice fought for, and hope rooted in the unlikeliest of places could grow strong enough to heal even the deepest wounds. He inhaled deeply and started planning the orchard. Gentle rain began to fall that evening, tapping soft rhythms on the rooftops of the Lockhart estate. Inside, the living room glowed with warm lamplight. Maya, Samantha, and Jasmine stretched out on the rug with blankets, pillows, and a stack of board games. Henry sat nearby in his favorite armchair, reading aloud from a worn leather journal notes from his mother, Eleanor, written by candlelight in the years before he left for college. Each page carried echoes of love, regret, hope. Maya glanced at him as he turned the page. The journal entry was short. "Family is more than blood, more than names. It's the courage to be seen, and the kindness to see others, too." Her heart flexed. That's why she'd stayed. That's why she'd saved a life. Because someone finally saw her. When Henry looked up, his eyes held something bright. "Your mother taught me that," he said softly. And she was right. Then he closed the journal and moved to stand beside the girls. They gathered around, fanning the pages out like treasure. Jasmine's fingers trembled as she traced the cursive handwriting. Samantha whispered, "It's pretty." Maya swallowed. She saved you once." Henry nodded. "She saved me, yes. And you three now are saving me again." A hush settled over them, a comfortable pause threaded with gratitude and quiet intimacy. Outside, the rain slowed, and though the sky was dark, the world felt full. The next morning brought a small delegation from the County Historical Society. Henry had decided to open the estate's old apple groves as educational gardens, part of the new foundation he planned to launch in honor of Eleanor and the girls. He invited Maya, Samantha, and Jasmine to be honorary youth members of the Garden Council. To his relief and their delight, they accepted. They gathered under the apple trees, rain-washed blossoms still clinging to branches. Buttoned in raincoats, the girls took shovels to soil beds, planting seedlings that would blossom into fruit trees over years, trees they would tend and watch grow, much like their own family. Maya stood beside Samantha, digging a small hole for a sapling. Jasmine knelt by her side, lightly patting soil around the roots. They worked in silence until Jasmine looked up. "Do you think we can come here every year?" Maya gave her a steady smile. "Yes." She looked at Henry. He nodded, proud, hopeful. When they finished, Henry gathered them in a circle. "Every year," he said, "this grove will be your memory and your promise, to plant compassion, to grow justice, to harvest hope for yourselves and others." They echoed him softly. Plant compassion, grow justice, harvest hope. After the planting, Maya retreated to the herb garden behind the house. She wanted to talk to Mary about planting lavender and chamomile, her grandmother's favorites. She found Mary there, gently pruning basil and mint. "Would you like help?" Maya asked. Mary looked up, her expression gentle and surprised. "I'd love your company." They worked side by side, clipping herbs and talking about tea blends for their new garden visitors. Mary recounted stories from her childhood as a farm girl, picking mint at dawn, making teas with her grandmother before church on Sundays. Maya listened, stepping closer into memory and belonging. When Mary stood and brushed soil from her hands, she looked firmly at Maya. "You're the kind of person who lives for others. Remember that." Maya nodded, feeling something settle deep inside her like a seed cracked open by light. Later that evening, Henry convened a meeting in his study with his lawyers and advisors, including Detective Reyes and Elijah Barron. They needed to finalize the structure of the Just Roots Foundation: youth gardens, scholarships for survivors, legal aid for children in foster care, and funding for anti-trafficking investigations. The room buzzed with possibilities. Maya slipped in quietly, carrying a sketchbook. She watched from the doorway as adults spoke names, figures, plans. She felt small but eager. Reyes noticed her and gestured gently. Henry smiled and welcomed her in. "Have an idea?" he asked. She nodded and rolled open her sketchbook to reveal drawings of the estate's gardens, winding paths, benches beneath apple trees, butterfly and flower motifs woven into the layout. She'd drawn spaces for children to sit and draw, a rotating exhibit of art by kids in foster care, and a memorial stone engraved with Eleanor's words: "Be seen, be kind, be brave." "Oh." Henry stared at it, then handed the sketchbook around the table. The room quieted as advisors murmured approval. Maya's design captured more than beauty, it carried heart. That night, she and Samantha tiptoed into Jasmine's room. The older girl sat on her bed, hugging her knees. "Are you okay?" Samantha asked quietly. Jasmine nodded, but her chin trembled. Maya climbed onto the bed and put an arm around her. "You're safe," she said softly. "We're your sisters." Jasmine leaned in and closed her eyes. "Thank you." Samantha lay beside them, inches apart. Maya smiled and closed her own eyes, breathing in the peace that had taken root. Late that night, Henry found Maya standing alone at the edge of the orchard, gazing at the young saplings planted months ago. Nightfall draped long shadows across them, but the leaves still caught silver moonlight. He approached quietly. She felt him and turned, eyes shining. "You look like you're 3 inches taller," he teased. She tried to smile. "Maybe a little." He stood beside her. "Never let them dull your shine, Maya." She looked up at him. "I won't, he breathed in the calm night air. "Remember how you traced the roots when we planted those trees?" She nodded, remembering the way the soil felt in her fingers. "They're doing well," he said. "Strong." She looked at the young trees, reaching upward. "Like us." He rested a hand on her shoulder. "Yes. Like us." They stood together, father and daughter, heartbeats in unison under the night sky. Later, as snow quietly began to dust the garden paths, Maya lay awake in bed. Jasmine and Samantha shared a quilt in the room next door. She could hear their soft breathing through the wall like a song. Her mind wandered, to Eleanor's journal, to planting trees, to her and Jasmine building a new life together. She thought of the foundation, gardens, and future seeds yet to plant. Tears came, but they were gentle, soft gratitude for roots finally found, for voices heard, for belonging sprouting out of the darkness. Outside, the saplings slumbered beneath protective wraps, waiting for spring. Maya closed her eyes and whispered into the dark, "I promise I'll help you grow." The moonlight caught the rim of the window, painting a silver arc across her face. And for the first time in a long time, sleep came easy. Because true family, carefully planted and nurtured, would always find its way to bloom even from the deepest roots. And Maya? She had found hers. Winter's first frost had fallen, frosting the garden's edges in lace-like patterns. But inside, the Lockhart home glowed with warmth and laughter. The girls had become an unbreakable unit, sometimes giggling over bedtime stories, sometimes quietly sketching together at the hearth. Their individual pains had softened into shared strength. On this evening, Henry had invited neighbors, foundation supporters, and community leaders to the estate's first-ever lantern-giving ceremony, a tradition inspired by Maya's drawings and Samantha's whispered memory of festival lights. Paper lanterns, each hand painted by a child supported through the foundation, drifted across the reflecting pool. The cool night sky pressed down softly. Snow had dusted the paths but melted into silver alongside the lantern's glow. Henry stood at the head of the stone walkway, his breath misting in the cold. Beside him, Detective Reyes, Elijah Barron, and Mary each had shaped this moment. Maya, Samantha, and Jasmine formed a small cluster near the water's edge, their lanterns in hand. The children's faces looked up at Henry's tall frame, eyes shining with reverence and pride. He stepped forward and raised his voice without strain, calm and resonant. Tonight begins a new chapter, not just for our family, but for all the children who walk dark roads alone. These lights we release are for hope, for memory, for lives restored. We plant more than trees, now we plant truth. He turned to the girls and invited them to speak. Samantha went first. Her voice was quiet but firm. For Jasmine, and for Maya, because I know what it's like to wake up and feel lost. Every night, I called, and someone answered me. She placed her lantern gently on the water. It drifted slowly, flame steady in the reflections. Jasmine followed. For the sister I thought I lost, the girl who drew butterflies and kept our hopes alive. Because sometimes, hope finds you. Her lantern flickered as it floated away, carrying her soft smile like promise. Maya's hand tightened on her lantern. She stepped forward last. Her voice wavered at first, but then found strength. For everyone they told I was nothing. For every child trapped in silence. For my sister. For my new family. For Eleanor, who taught us all to see each other. I am someone. We are someone. Her lantern drifted with a quiet surge, named in flame. The three held each other's hands for a moment, their silhouettes brown gold in lamplight. For Henry, eyes glistening, it was a triumph greater than any courtroom verdict. The guests released their lanterns too. The reflecting pool became a sea of small, drifting lights, hope incarnate. Conversations hummed in the frosty air, about new scholarships, about community gardens for underserved neighborhoods, about safe houses for at-risk youth. The Just Roots Foundation had momentum. The dream was becoming real. Later, inside the great hall, heaters hummed, and friends gathered around tables laden with warm cider and cookies. Maya helped Samantha and Jasmine serve guests, their laughter light as feather. Mary leaned into Henry, whispering, "Look at them." He followed her gaze. The girls were radiant. Maya told a sponsor about her garden layout. Samantha showed off her new sketchbook. Jasmine handed out homemade friendship bracelets. Henry's chest filled with fierce pride. He thought of Eleanor, how she would have clapped, how tears would have glistened in her eyes. He closed them for a moment and breathed in the warmth, carried on love. At the end of the evening, Henry stood in the library doorway. Maya approached. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For giving us something real." He smiled and knelt to her level. "You gave it to us. All of it." She looked at him. "Does it hurt less now?" He took her hand. "Yes, but I carry it still. Because it brought us here." They walked together toward the hearth, hand in hand, flickering lamplight moving across their shadows. Samantha and Jasmine burst in after them, each holding a lantern sketch drawn that night in the garden by candlelight. The girls showed them to family and friends. Each drawing depicted a garden, or a butterfly, or 3 girls standing beneath lanterns. One of the sponsors, a local artist, asked to speak. She invited Maya and Jasmine to co-design a children's book about their experience. Fictional, gentle, full of wonder and bravery. Maya and Jasmine exchanged wide-eyed smiles. "Can we?" Jasmine asked. "You two wouldn't just write it," the sponsor said. "You'd set it on fire." Tears in Maya's eyes, Samantha jumped and hugged her, laughter like falling bells. Late that night, the estate was finally hushed. Snow drifted silently on stone. Henry walked the garden alone, footsteps soft and white. He paused at the reflecting pool where lanterns had once drifted, now empty, but memories floating like embers. He reached out and ran a finger across a slim steel rod from the pool's edge. He smiled, small and true. Inside, the girls slept peaceful in a way Henry once believed impossible again. He lingered in the doorway of their room, Maya's brushstrokes visible on a beautiful sketch pinned to her wall. Samantha's quilt, patterned with apple blossoms, covered 2 tired sisters nestled close. Jasmine slept with a stuffed rabbit her grandmother had sewn a gift from Mary that said, "You are home." By his bedside, Henry placed a small lamp shaped like a lantern. The bronze etched with butterflies and apple blossoms. It glowed with warm wax flicker light even when power was out. A final gift to keep them safe. To remind them always, light can break through any shadow. He whispered into the quiet, "For Eleanor, for Samantha, for Maya, for Jasmine, for every child who dared to speak, you are seen, and you are home." He turned off the hall lights and stepped away slowly, leaving the lantern lamp burning. Its glow lit the path to the future, a future they would build together, rooted in justice, compassion, and unbreakable love. Outside, snow whispered over the orchard. Beneath the young saplings, tiny buds slept. In the silent dark, they waited. For spring, for songs, for the first bloom beneath the stars. Dawn came slowly to the Lockhart estate. A gentle pink light crept through bare branches overhead, hinting at warmer days to come. Winter's snow had melted into glossy green grass, and the orchard was dotted with emerging buds. Henry stood outside the greenhouse, sipping his coffee, breathing deeply, the new season hope rising in every inhalation. Inside, the house trembled with quiet energy. Jasmine tiptoed down the hall, sketchbook in hand. At the kitchen door, she hesitated. Mary looked up, smiling warmly as she prepared oatmeal and fresh fruit. "Good morning, Jasmine. Come in." Her voice was soft and steady. Jasmine followed her to the table. Samantha bounded in moments later, clutching a handful of daffodils Mary had arranged in a blue vase. Maya trailed behind them, steady and bright. Henry joined them, setting mugs before the girls. "Spring," he said, "means the world is waking. So are we." They ate in quiet conversation, the kind punctuated by laughter and gentle encouragement. Samantha carefully tucked a daffodil behind Jasmine's ear. Jasmine's face lit up in a shy smile. After breakfast, Henry gathered Maya. "You ready?" She nodded, slipping into her jacket. He led her outside where the young saplings stood tight in their rows. He handed her a set of tools, pruning shears, ribbon, a small watering can. "They've grown well," he said, "and we're going to welcome spring properly." Maya knelt and inspected the youngest sapling, the one she and Jasmine had planted first. She clipped a broken twig and tied a ribbon with blue and gold strands around the base colors of hope, of their family bond. She watered it gently. Morning light glowed on the ribbon's knot. "Every spring," Henry said quietly, "we mark new life, you and Jasmine, and the promise we made." Maya looked up at him. "I want to do that for kids who never planted anything." He nodded. "And you will. That's why we're planting this." He gestured to the wider space where the foundation planned a community garden, fruit trees, vegetables, even a small bees and butterflies sanctuary. The trio could help design it, teach other kids to plant roots and hope. Later that day, Henry met with local school administrators. He presented a proposal, a program where children from underserved neighborhoods came to the Lockhart estate once a month to learn gardening, art, and legal advocacy about their rights. The idea was to merge justice with nature to show them they had roots worth tending. As the meeting wrapped, Henry glanced over at Maya, who stood recording notes and sketching layout ideas. He felt the familiar swell of pride. That fierce little girl had become a bright strategist, a gentle leader. He wondered what Eleanor would say, the mother who taught him to see others, to plant compassion. That evening, Mary led a cooking class in the kitchen. Samantha and Jasmine joined her, their hands dusted with flour as they kneaded dough for dinner rolls. Maya hovered near the table, watching their coordination shoulders brushing with sisterly ease. At Henry's side, Detective Reyes watched too, clipboard in hand. She nodded to Henry. They're thriving. So is the program. Henry smiled softly. Because they were saved, and now they give back. Reyes looked at Maya. You know, I think you'll be teaching here soon. Maya's lips quivered. Maybe. A little class? About drawing or gardens? Reyes nodded. Yes, a little class. For kids who need to be seen. Maya looked at her sisters, then back at Henry. He offered a slow smile. Would you teach with her? Samantha jumped in with enthusiasm. Yes, I'll help cook. Jasmine looked shy but nodded. And I'll draw for them. That night, the three girls lay crowded under a quilt in Maya's room. A soft lamplight illuminated sketches, plans for garden beds shaped like butterflies, hearts, and names of children who'd survived too much. Jasmine sketched tiny daisies around Maya's name. Samantha doodled suns that seemed to beam on the paper. Tomorrow, Maya whispered, we'll start telling them. She looked at Jasmine. Do you think she'll like it? Jasmine squeezed her hand. She'll love it. Samantha yawned deeply. Gardeners, artists, cooks. We'll be busy. They drifted toward sleep, breathing soft in the dim light. Henry stood by the reflecting pool later, watching stars flicker on the water's surface. The soft sound of wind stirred early blossoms overhead. He thought of the journey. A rich woman's betrayal, a brave street girl, a missing sister found, the fight for justice, the creation of home. Now, the future was planting itself beneath his feet. Mary appeared with a gentle tap. She offered him a cup of chamomile tea fresh from the garden. Vapor curled in the cool air. They stood beside each other silently, watching the saplings sway. Mary said softly, They'll grow. He turned to her. Yes, they will. Before bed, he wrote in his journal his mother's words beside his own. Where roots are broken, it's our duty to sow anew. He added beneath in his mother's cursive style. New chapter. New family. New lives. Rooted in justice and blooming in love. He closed the book, switched off his lamp, and walked through the silent halls to stand in the doorway of the children's wing. The glow from Maya's lamp shaped their sleeping faces, Maya and Jasmine sharing faint breathing rhythms. Samantha slept next door, her quilt patterned with blossoming apples. He whispered into the hush, Rest well, tomorrow we plant more hope. Outside, spring whispered through fragile branches. The first stars of the evening blinked gently above the orchard, where young trees stood tall, planted by three brave girls and waiting for what was yet to come, because roots are patient, and healing is possible, and love the kind you fight for is powerful enough to grow forever. Morning light spilled through the tall windows of the community center's classroom, bringing warmth to the dozen faces turned toward Maya, Samantha, and Jasmine. The girls stood at the front, their drawings and garden layouts pinned along the corkboard behind them. Today marked the first official session of the Just Roots Youth Program, an initiative born from grief but rooted in purpose. Henry stood at the back of the room alongside Detective Reyes and Mary. His heart thumped with pride. This moment, three girls teaching other children about growth, hope, and visibility, was exactly what Eleanor would have wanted. Maya began. Good morning, she said softly, her voice steady. She slid a large sketch across the table, a garden outline shaped in interlocking heart and butterfly motifs. We designed this space for you, so you can plant things and stories of your own. The children leaned forward, eyes bright and curious. Samantha stepped in. We'll help you tend the garden. We'll cook with what you grow. And Jasmine, she paused with a grin, Jasmine will teach you how to draw what grows so your garden stories live forever. Jasmine's voice, usually quiet, found strength. Art is a way to say things when words are too heavy. The children nodded thoughtfully. One little boy raised his hand. Can I plant tomatoes? Maya's eyes danced. You can plant anything you imagine. A girl with freckles whispered. I want daisies for my mom. Maya smiled and nodded. Let's plant them. After a round of excited murmurs, the three led the group outside to the early spring plot behind the center. Shovels stood ready. Soil was neatly turned. The girls, arms linked, walked ahead like gentle captains. Henry followed behind them, camera in hand, capturing the moment for the foundation's newsletter. They knelt in a line, the children beside them, planting tiny shoots, marigolds, daffodils, pea vines. Maya guided hands, whispering encouragement. Samantha handed seedlings with grand enthusiasm. Jasmine sketched quick pictures in her notebook of each planting pair. The earth smelled soft and clean. Children's laughter lifted like petals on a breeze. Afterward, they washed hands at an outdoor tap, chattering about how things would bloom bigger by summer. Maya caught Henry's eye. He gave a small thumbs up. She squeezed his hand briefly before releasing it to help tie up the pea plants. That afternoon, Mary prepared a meal from their harvest herb-infused bread, roasted carrots, pea soup. Children sat at long tables with their parents. The air smelled of basil and baking. Maya stood beside Mary, helping ladle soup. Samantha offered bread with a proud flourish. Jasmine helped by recreating small garden sketches on napkins, doodles of sunflowers and hearts and butterflies gifts for the children to take home. Henry knelt beside Maya at one point. How do you feel? Maya paused. Do you think we're doing enough? He smiled gently. We're doing exactly what needed doing. The pride in his voice melted something behind her chest. A long, dormant flame. That evening, at home, the girls gathered in the living room to record a short story for a local radio segment about the foundation. The room was cozy, lamplight warm, carpet soft, shadows friendly in corners. Maya held the microphone first. Her voice came clear and calm. We're the Just Roots girls. Our garden grows from love and justice. We plant seeds in the earth and in our hearts. For every child who thought they were forgotten, this garden says, you are seen. She turned and passed the mic to Jasmine. Jasmine spoke softly but confidently. Art captures the things we feel, so when we're lost, we can look back at the drawing and remember, I was here, I mattered. Samantha held the mic last. Her tones sparkled like sunshine. And when we cook what we grow, we share more than food. We share stories. We share hope. You belong. We belong together. A producer behind the glass smiled. That's perfect. We'll air this tomorrow morning. Late that night, the house was hushed. Soft snores lulled from the children's wing. Henry entered the kitchen. Maya was there, gazing out into the night at the saplings he'd planted on spring's first dawn. The moonlight trailed across their branches like soft promise. He handed her a mug of cocoa. Made it just like you two, like it marshmallows on top. She smiled. They walked outside to the garden, the air brisk and alive. Jasmine and Samantha joined, bundled in coats and scarves. They carried blankets. Henry spread the blankets beneath the trees. He pointed upward. Look, stars are brave too. They shine in the darkness. Maya sat beside him. Feels like everything changed. He nodded slowly. It has. And you were the one who changed it. She turned back to the garden where buds pressed green from branches. The new plot behind the community center. The dinners they shared. The radio voices still echoing through speakers tomorrow morning. She whispered, we planted something bigger than seeds. Henry's eyes glowed in the starlight. We did. They sat together, three sisters and a father, wrapped in blankets beneath young trees and silver constellations. And in that hush, after fear, after loss, they found something endless. A family renewed. A promise kept. And roots that ran deeper than any darkness could ever claim. Because here, together hope would always grow. Spring stretched across the Lockhart estate like a slow, sweet promise. Buds unfurled, tender green reaches trembling under sunlight. The orchard bloomed, frost-kissed petals drifting like confetti in the breeze. Inside, life was flowing, healing, expanding. That morning, a school bus arrived in the long drive, disgorging a group of children from underprivileged neighborhoods for their monthly visit. They climbed down in a shift of skirts and backpacks, chattering excitedly. A few paused at the lineup of gardens, their eyes wide with wonder. Today, the Just Roots Youth Garden would officially open to the public. Maya, Samantha, and Jasmine led them through the rows. Maya explained planting techniques, how to space seedlings, how to water gently so roots claimed the earth firmly. Samantha passed out gardening gloves in bright colors, teasing that she'd match each child's personality with glove design, flower patterns for dreamers, stripes for thinkers, bold solids for fighters. Jasmine balanced small sketch pads and pencils, promising each child they'd draw what they saw to remember. The children listened, their faces curious, shy, hopeful. One boy, 13, burned with urgency. He asked, "Can this garden help us stay together? Me and my little sister, we bounce through foster homes." Maya knelt beside him, thumb brushing his glove. "We plant roots here," she said quietly, "and some of those roots, like trust and courage, they travel in you. You carry them wherever you go, and you can plant them again." For a moment, everything paused, blossoms, sunshine, and children's breathing. She'd spoken something deeper than gardening, something real. That afternoon, the estate brimmed. Volunteers from local nonprofits joined them to prepare share baskets of produce, lettuce, radishes, herbs for families in food deserts. Jasmine designed hand-painted labels with titles like Hope Lettuce and Courage Carrots. Samantha packed baskets with laughter and chatter about cooking soup for neighbors. Maya organized the volunteer schedule with unflappable calm. Henry observed from the pergola above, tears bright in his gaze as he witnessed community weaving itself through those harvest baskets. In the study that night, the family gathered for supper. The table was a riot of color-roasted vegetables, herb bread, wildflower honey from the campus bees. Detective Reyes sat with them, having convinced the young girls to teach an after-school workshop as part of the Foundation's programming. Maya on design, Jasmine on art, Samantha on cooking. Reyes raised her glass. "To the roots you've grown and the voices you've given." Maya and her sisters raised their glasses too, steam drifting like incense from mint tea. Henry cleared his throat, quiet in that way that meant he carried gratitude heavier than any trophy. To family chosen, dreams honored, and futures built on love. They drank. And in that circle of warmth, order, and gentle conviction, everything felt possible. The next morning, Jasmine slipped out into the herb garden before dawn. Moonlight washed over dew-lushed sage leaves. She knelt and touched a lavender flower, inhaling. She traced the delicate petals with her pencil, as soon as she returned inside, working carefully, softly, page after page. One sketch in particular captured her heart. 3 girls standing between apple trees, lanterns drifting above them like ghost stars. Underneath she wrote, "We rise together." Feeling the need to share, she found Maya in the greenhouse pruning young tomato plants. Jasmine slipped the sketch into Maya's hand without a word. Maya looked, then smiled, a quiet recognition of kinship so deep it didn't need speech. "Beautiful," Maya said. Together they walked through the greenhouse. Samantha joined them, wiping flower dust from her hands. She squeezed both their shoulders. "Hope looks good on us," she said. They stood together in silence, 3 daughters of survival, creativity, and healing. That evening, Henry convened a Zoom call with corporate partners and Foundation board members. The video feed revealed rows of faces, some surprised, some skeptical, some moved. He and Reyes presented impact data. 16 youth gardeners, 4 schools involved, 2 neighborhoods served, 100 produce baskets distributed weekly. Jasmine had crafted an infographic with illustrations. Maya had typed bullet-pointed success stories. Jordan's sister stays in the same school now. Maria drew her first portrait. Tito cooked a meal for the first time. Samantha shared video clips of children tasting their own garden greens and grinning with wonder. When the feed closed, board members called in immediate donations. Some offered land, others offered programs. One local chef volunteered to help develop cooking curriculum. Henry leaned back, exhaling relief, but also determination. He turned to Maya, who sat beside him with her hair pulled into a neat braid. Maya's eyes were glowing. "We're doing it," he whispered. She nodded. "We're building something real." Late that night, Jasmine woke Henry. Her expression was intense. "Mr. Lockhart, Dad, I had a dream." He set aside the journal he'd been sketching in. "Tell me." She described it. A field of apple blossoms in moonlight. Butterflies emerged from the blooms, lifting into sky paths that shaped letters in stars. Hope, Belong, you are home. He bent to kiss her forehead. I think your art is reaching farther than words. Jasmine's smile was soft. I want others to dream like that too. Henry nodded. And you will. The following weekend, the foundation held its first annual Seeds of Voices festival on the grounds. Lanterns were painted, children performed songs, art was displayed beneath tents, cooking demonstrations simmered scents of garlic and mint through the air, families attended, volunteers offered hugs. The city television broadcast live for a segment on community renewal. Maya stood on a small stage, microphone in hand. Beside her were Samantha and Jasmine, and several of the garden's children. She spoke with clarity and passion. When we started, we were 3 lost girls. 3 kids who knew what it was to be forgotten. But then we planted something stronger, rooted in truth, watered with compassion. Now we ask, will you plant with us? Will you let your voice seed justice? Will you know you belong? The crowd erupted into applause. Tears shimmered in many eyes. It wasn't a moment of spectacle. It was a moment of communion, of shared understanding. That night, as twilight dimmed the festival and lanterns flickered into the sky, Maya stood beside her sisters at the reflecting pool. She watched their little lights drift across water like floating hopes. Jasmine and Samantha held her hands. Do you think she knows? Jasmine asked, voice small. Maya looked upward. Mom, I think she sees. Samantha squeezed them both. She'd be proud. They let their lanterns go. They watched them drift together like memories borne aloft. Henry joined them. He drew them close. 10 years from now, he said, voice soft with vision, when these trees fill with blossoms, and this garden stands tall, and children's laughter echoes through these rows, remember this moment, this small spark we began. The girls looked up at the petals drifting around them. The candle's glow softened in their eyes. And if you ever forget, he added, look to each other, because here in your love, your courage, your truth, you'll always find your way back home. They held one another tight beneath the apple trees, and in that quiet embrace, with lanterns floating behind them and buds breathing into life, everything felt rooted in truth, rooted in love, rooted in something eternal. And spring finally blossomed whole. The early summer sun settled over the Lockhart orchard like a benediction, warm, steady, and full of promise. Petals had turned shades of apple pink and white. Fruit buds began to swell. The entire estate pulsed with life. Inside, the house was alive with laughter, planning, and the restful hum of hope transformed into action. That morning, a FedEx truck pulled into the driveway. Maya and Samantha ran to the door, dusting their hands on their jeans. Jasmine followed, carrying her sketchbook close. Henry met them with paperwork in hand. It's from the DA, he said, voice steady. It's official. He carefully unfolded a letter. Carter Briggs and his network are being prosecuted on federal charges: child trafficking, conspiracy, international smuggling. Veronica Hart herself has additional counts: organized criminal enterprise, including obstruction and money laundering. His eyes glistened, but his tone was calm relief, anchored in justice. Maya exhaled. So did Jasmine. Samantha squeezed her father's hand. At lunch, the family gathered around the long dining table, herbs from the garden steaming on plates. Detective Reyes was there too, visiting to help celebrate. She raised her glass of iced tea. To truth and all the people brave enough to find it. Maya raised hers too. To every child who deserves someone to listen. That afternoon, Maya led Samantha and Jasmine through the orchard with a clipboard. They paused at each sapling. Maya made small check marks. They're thriving. She smiled as a gentle breeze stirred the leaves. Like us. Samantha and Jasmine squeezed her hands. For them, these trees marked memory and growth, something they could measure in leaves and sky and time. By evening, the estate gates opened wide to welcome a group of educators and social workers, those who'd applied to bring children to visit the Just Roots garden as part of after-school programs. Maya and Jasmine greeted them with drawings and hand-dipped seed packets tied with ribbons. Jasmine's art depicted apple blossoms, butterflies, and a trio of girls holding hands. Maya's maps showed benches and reading corners among the trees. One principal asked Maya, "Will they help build these spaces too?" Maya met each question with calm confidence. "They already are," she answered. Samantha added, "Every seed they plant, every picture they draw, it's their story we're growing." Late that night, After everyone departed, Henry found Maya, Jasmine, and Samantha together in the greenhouse. The room glowed with the low heat and rows of seedlings, tomatoes, basil, sunflowers almost ready to bloom. Jasmine sketched quietly. Samantha watered gently. Maya knelt, tying new bamboo stakes to young plants for support. Henry watched them from the doorway, 3 daughters rooted in renewal. He cleared his throat softly. "You 3, you've built something extraordinary." Maya looked up. "We just listened." He closed his eyes. Listening is rare and powerful. He stepped forward and placed small butterfly-shaped tokens around a watering station. "These are for you," he said. "To remind you, growth takes gentleness." They each accepted one and pressed a finger to their lips, closing their eyes. Then Maya led them in a quiet ritual, sprinkling water while whispering 3 words: hope, truth, home. The droplets shimmered on leaves like stars born again. The following weekend, Henry was invited to speak at a national conference on child welfare and community healing. He prepared his remarks carefully, even reading Eleanor's journal entries for grounding. When he stepped onto the stage before hundreds of professionals, his heart pounded, but the room hushed within seconds. He spoke of loss and grief, of Maya, the street child who spoke truth and saved his daughter, of Jasmine, the lost sister found through courage and memory, of Samantha, whose innocence held light in darkness. He spoke of roots grown in soil and souls, of how justice and love can coincide through action and listening. As he concluded, he quoted Eleanor's words, "Compassion is the seed, justice is the harvest." The room rose in applause. Among the audience, Maya watched safely from the front row with Jasmine and Samantha curled into her side. They clapped softly, but their eyes shone with belonging. Maya's jaw ticked with emotion. After his talk, educators approached her requests for student art, community garden plans, mentorship offers. That night, back at the estate, they gathered under the old oak in the orchard. Families, volunteers, neighbors, social workers, everyone who had become part of the Just Roots circle. Soft music wafted through strings and piano. Children performed a short play about planting seeds, growing flowers, and finding home. Lanterns, similar to those Maya and her sisters had released months ago, floated on ponds and hung from tree branches, each hand painted by participants of the foundation. Maya watched as Jasmine and Samantha took turns reading texts they'd written for the playlines about memory, loss, hope. Afterward, they joined hands and led the audience in a song about seeds and roots, their voices blending with warmth and harmony. Henry stood nearby with Reyes and Mary. Reyes whispered, "They're changing the world." Mary nodded, tears in her eyes. "And so are we." Later, Maya found Henry under the lantern-lit arbor. He offered her his coat, though she barely felt the chill. They stood side by side, looking out at the community they'd helped build, a garden full of life, laughter, and stories. She leaned against him. "Do you think Mom would be proud?" He put a hand on her shoulder, his voice thick. "She taught me how to see people. Tonight I see you so clearly." He paused. "And I'm prouder than words." She closed her eyes, letting warmth bloom inside. Behind them, Jasmine and Samantha joined with their arms. Together, the 4 of them stood beneath apple blooms and paper lantern lights, 3 sisters and their father, rooted in justice, love, and unbreakable belonging. And in that moment, the orchard itself seemed to sigh steady, full, and finally home. Because when the seeds of truth are planted, the harvest is always new voices and a legacy of hope. Autumn dawned again over the Lockhart estate, though this time it felt different. The orchard's apple leaves were turning gold and flame-red, promises of fruit and warmth. But more than that, the home hummed with quiet confidence and belonging. Roots had taken hold, and leaves whispered stories in the breeze. In the heart of the garden sat Maya, Samantha, and Jasmine at a low bench. Leaf-cracked notebooks rested in their laps. A gentle breeze carried the scent of ripe apples and lavender. The 3 girls were sketching new layouts for the gardens, ideas for paths, artwork displays, even benches under the oldest tree where their mother's favorite bird had nested years ago. Henry stood a few steps behind them, watching. He carried a wicker basket half filled with apples they'd harvested earlier that day. Mary and Detective Reyes followed, each carrying blankets and mugs of spiced cider. The estate was preparing for a small gathering, just a few dozen families, an unofficial launching of the first yield of apples for donation to food-insecure neighborhoods. Maya rose and reached into Henry's basket, dusting one apple off. She held it like something sacred and offered it to Jasmine, then Samantha. They took bite together, the crisp sweetness folding over their tongues. Maya closed her eyes with a small sigh. "Summer's work," she said. "We did that." Jasmine nodded, light in her eyes. "You and Mommy watching." Samantha smiled and nudged Maya's shoulder. "And Daddy too." Henry's chest swelled. He knelt beside Maya. "Yes, all of us. Because together, we grew something no one dreamed possible." They walked into the orchard's heart, where families were gathering beneath a trellis of vines turning red and amber. Blankets were spread on the grass. Baskets of apples and bread sat beside them. The community children giggled as they climbed low branches, picking apples for their parents. Maya, Jasmine, and Samantha guided them gently, pointing out the juiciest fruit, the bird-kissed branches, the apple blossoms still visible in memory stamp sketches Summer had drawn earlier. Before long, Henry stood on a small rise overlooking the gathering. He cleared his throat softly, but didn't need a mic. All attention turned toward him. The children quieted instantly. The adults hushed too. "Today," he began, voice steady with pride and memory, "we celebrate the harvest. Not just of fruit, but of trust, of bravery, of voices finally heard." The orchard seemed to inhale. He turned to his family, his 3 daughters, rooted and tall-hearted. "Maya, Samantha, Jasmine, you turned your pain into promise. You taught us all that hope can be planted, water can be justice, and fruit can feed more than hunger, it feeds belonging." There were nods and silent tears among the adults. A few children cheered softly. Henry turned to Mary and Reyes. "And gratitude to those who believed when it was easier to turn away. Thank you for staying." They exchanged warm looks, rainlight in their eyes. He closed with this. "These apples, these seeds, will go beyond this orchard. We will share them, teach with them, serve with them. Here and beyond. This is forever. And I promise you hope will grow stronger than any sorrow we've known." He smiled, eyes brimming but sure, "Because this garden is ours, all of ours." As the afternoon sun sank low between the rows of trees, the crowd lingered. Families picnicked. Children ran between tree trunks, laughter ringing like wind chimes. Maya, Jasmine, and Samantha knelt by the small pond, tossing apple slices for koi fish that danced at the surface. They giggled as the fish competed for bites. Henry joined them, sitting quietly beside them. He watched the tree branches sway above. A reflection of golden leaves shimmered in the water. "Look," he said, "everyone's gathered here. They come for apples but stay for what they see themselves in." Maya glanced up at him, thoughtful. "Is that how we keep growing?" Henry nodded. "Yes, we root ourselves in truth, and the world starts to grow with us." Samantha wrapped her arm around her sister's. Jasmine leaned into her. Maya closed her eyes, felt the apple's gentle weight in her palm, tasted hope in their sweet tang. Henry inched closer, placing a gentle hand on their backs. "Thank you for saving us, for being brave, for teaching us." They didn't reply, no need. Their hearts glowed in the orchard light. When dusk came, Mary summoned the tiny lanterns painted by children at the garden classes. They flickered to life, suspended from branches and trellis wires. The soft light glowed in faces, looking up girls who once feared being forgotten, boys who touched fruit for the first time, adults who braved grief and hoped again. Maya took Jasmine's hand and gestured for Samantha to follow. They walked beneath the lantern-lit canopy, each step a whisper of steps taken before. Maya in alleys, Jasmine in foster homes, Samantha alone behind institutional walls. Now they walked together, visible, rooted, belonging. At the trellis by the reflecting pool stood Henry. The girls joined him. He knelt and looked into the water lantern light, shimmering gentle on the surface. He whispered, "This is for them all who were lost." The girls each cast a small apple blossom onto the water. It dove, drifting in the glow. Henry added one more. The blossoms floated in circles, slow as memory, strong as love. He stood slowly. "Ready?" They nodded. He led them outward into the orchard, lantern trail lighting their path. The families followed behind in quiet procession, footsteps soft on grass. They reached the gate, where the air cool and clear. A hush fell like dawn. Henry turned to the crowd and raised his voice soft, certain, "Let this orchard stand as testament that every child who spoke truth can build home, that justice and compassion can coexist, that we are all rooted in one another, and that love, when planted, blooms always." Then he held out his hands. The crowd stepped forward, candle in hand, light on light. Maya and her sisters led the way, 3 daughters of survival, memory, and unbroken hope walking into the future they had made. And in the orchard's heart, where blossoms and lanterns glowed beneath moonlight, the promise had come full circle. Family chosen, justice lived, and love everlasting rooted deep in every seed, every child, every turn of the seasons. Because in this garden, hope wasn't just a dream, it was the only harvest that mattered. The story of Maya, Samantha, and Jasmine teaches us that healing and justice often begin with the courage to speak the truth, even when it's painful. Through their resilience and love, they show that family is not only defined by blood but by the bonds we choose to build. It reminds us that every voice, no matter how small, can sow seeds of change, and when nurtured with compassion and purpose, those seeds can grow into something powerful. A home, a community, a legacy of hope. Ultimately, the story affirms that justice isn't just about punishment, it's about restoration, belonging, and the quiet strength of those who refuse to give up.